Hello, this is Blair Stanislao with the Happy Lion Center. Welcome to our podcast, Mystical and Infamous, where we have playful and easy conversations about anything mystical, getting to the heart of all things strange and weird. Join us in a bit of magical tomfoolery, spreading the alchemy of love and light. And now, we invite you to enjoy the show.
I think that's what's so hard about triggers is half of the time we don't recognize them as being triggers because we're so caught up in the moment instead of stepping out of our bubble and going, God, I am really angry.
Yeah.
What is this really about? It's just really hard because you're so caught up in the moment and you're just reacting instead of responding. And so you are all feeling attacked or whatever the situation is at hand versus going, uh-oh, I'm really upset here. Take a deep breath, step back, get out of your head into your body, breathe into what is the emotion you're feeling. That's what I do when I try to assess what am I actually feeling here? Because sometimes it isn't always anger. Maybe it's sadness, or maybe it's regret, or maybe it's resentment, or maybe it's happiness. You can have a happy trigger too. There's just so many different emotions. And I think when we disconnect from our body, which is where our emotions are housed, we are all in our head just thinking of the next thing to say.
Yeah.
Right. Especially in that moment.
Yeah. So before we started recording, I was just sharing with you, I just want to give to the listeners. I've been doing this work we talk about. And yesterday, the question that was posed to me was, I'm actually going to look at my notes so I can remember. The question that was posed to me was about like something had happened to me when I was 4 years old, which I don't remember. Okay.
Of course.
So this person was using hand analysis, and essentially, as we've talked before, we establish coping mechanisms in the moment, right? That keep us safe. So something happened when I was 4. They caused me to basically not be seen. And I have a lot of anger towards it. So the anger was shown in my hand. It's really obnoxious. Forgot what she called them, but it sounded like little knives. Like, oh, geez, you have a lot of anger. Okay. So, and you don't, I think a lot of people don't even recognize it. Like, I'll at least say that I don't. I mean, like, I get to the point where I'm like, she's asking me all these questions, and it was really like, well, what do you have anger about? Or how were you allowed to express it or something? And my answer was I was not allowed to express it. Like, yeah, I had anger. I was angry about some situation that was occurring, but my mother told me, no, you can't do that.
Yeah, you can't be angry.
Yeah. So as an adult, it's like I get a little frustrated and I take a deep breath and, I try to collect my thoughts before I start talking, but that doesn't always happen because when we have the triggers, right?
Right.
We are in that reactive state. And so this morning, it was a conversation about dishes and how the dishes need to be done a certain way. Otherwise, it meant a big, screw you kind of thing to the other person, right? And that irritates me because I don't see that as I'm the one not doing the dishes, or maybe there's other people in the house not doing the dishes, but I don't see them as it's a big flip of the bird to anybody else. And I reframed it as, well, not really. It's more like somebody did something and a mess was made. It hasn't been cleaned up yet. Or maybe somebody did something and a mess was made, but just because they don't clean up the way that you want it cleaned up doesn't necessarily make it wrong, right?
Right.
So I recognized in the moment, because the conversation continued, that, okay, this is because it was irritating me. I was irritated. Like, why do we have to have this conversation? I already did the dishes. They're done. Why do we need to talk about it again? And because I had, in a way, I felt like I had let it go. But then he starts the conversation again. And it was irritating me. So my thought was, okay, this is a trigger. This is here for me. I'm irritated. There's a reason for this. Okay. Why am I irritated? It's not about the conversation that we're having. It's not even about the dishes. And somewhere in my session yesterday, something came up about, and it was all revolving around not being seen. Okay. And it was essentially, it wasn't worth the effort it wasn't worth the effort sometimes to try and be seen or be understood, or because not everybody, it's not going to happen every time. People aren't going to acknowledge you for who you are
Right.
all the time. So that was my conclusion. And of course it's actually given me a lot of resilience, because essentially I know, like someone like this podcast right now, how many listeners do we have? I don't know, but guess what?
Right.
It's going to grow, and it doesn't even really matter, because this is something I'm meant to do, because I
Right.
know whoever's listening to this is meant to hear this conversation. But if I try and compare myself to other people, then it's not helpful. Right.
Yeah.
So it did help me in a way, but also at some point connected to all that triggering was like, I don't like people telling me what to do. Okay. And that's like genetic. That definitely was taught to me, ancestral kind of stuff for sure. But it's also, it's not even like, I don't even feel like it's something that I did or I didn't. I'm sure that I affirmed that thought process. I don't like people telling me what to do. I need to do it on my own. But I know it is revolved around not being seen and being angry and all of that. So I know that this conversation is all connected to that. So what I was asking you is, what do we do when we're in the moment? Let's say at least we've acknowledged it. I've said, okay, like, an hour and a half ago, I said, okay, this is really irritating me. He keeps talking about this thing. I don't really feel like we need to talk about it again, but it's okay. All right. It is irritating me. All right. So this is here for me to learn something from. I need to know what I learned. I need to learn from it. Right. So what do we do then?
That's the first step. I think you being aware, first of all, that you're pissed off. Because if you're not even aware of that and you're just going off and saying, why are we having this conversation, and not really observing you in action. It's not observing him, because the trigger isn't for him. It's for you. No. So observing you and how you're reacting is 9 times out of 10, the thing you are supposed to see is your reaction. So what I do, like I was saying, step out of that moment briefly, mentally, and go, holy cow, how does this actually make me feel? And attach it to an emotion, because the emotion is going to lead you to a belief that is not based on truth. And
okay, so we got something right here. Let's do this. Okay. So
you want to dig on it? I'll do it.
It makes me feel like somebody else is trying to control me.
Okay. What's the worst thing about that?
For sure.
Right. So now let's just keep going. What's the worst thing about someone trying to control you? Then what happens if someone controls you? What's the worst thing about that?
They do stuff I don't want to do, or they cause things to happen that I don't want to participate in. Like,
okay, so take they out of it and go to how it makes you feel.
Okay. I wind up being in situations I don't want to be in.
Okay. And then what happens? What's the worst thing that's about that?
I feel trapped. Like, I don't know how to get out.
There it is. I feel trapped. Then you go to your childhood and think about the first time you felt trapped and you didn't want to do something you were forced to do. And what do you got? A memory will pop up.
I don't know that I have like a specific kind of memory, but I do remember the general feeling of what I know it was by age 7. I eventually got to the point where I was like, if I try to do things with my sister, she controls the situation, which I'm sure is where all this is coming from. She controls the situation. I wind up doing stuff I don't want to do. And how do I get out of it? The only way I could get out of that was like not be around her.
Okay, so I feel trapped is kind of the top belief. There's something more attached to it, and I'm thinking it's a fear. So let's keep going. And I like the idea of your sister playing this out with you. If you can't get out of it and all you can do is leave, How does that make you feel emotionally? Go to an emotion when you want to flee, right? That's a trauma response.
Mm-hmm.
Don't know how else to cope. So go with the emotion. How does that make you feel?
Wanting to flee?
You feel trapped and you want to leave the situation because she's going to make you
Mm-hmm.
do something you don't want to do.
Mm-hmm. And how does it make me feel
How does
being
it make you
trapped?
feel? Yeah.
Like I can't breathe.
Like you can't breathe. And if you can't breathe, then what happens?
Then I die.
Then you die. Okay. Do you see? It's a fear of dying. It's a fear of death. That's the bottom belief. And I'm just going to tell you right now, it's one of the biggest healer wounds that we carry as healers because we were burned at the stake, or we were drowned, or we were choked, or we were decapitated, or we whatever.
Yeah.
And so healers possess this very deep wound of dying because they were killed.
What's interesting you say that, because as a widow, here I am like 11 years out. I'm now remarried recently. And that was one of the realizations through the grieving process that I realized, because I've done a lot of work and study and, like a lot of work on this stuff. If I were to say, honestly, my first mother-in-law has cancer right now, and she's coping with it, meaning she's doing the traditional medical practices. Okay. So she's taking, what is it? Chemo, I think, right now. So my kids, her grandchildren, of course, we're trying to stay in contact with her. She's far away right now. But when she called to let us know this, we had our conversation and I hung up the phone and I said, you guys need to know that if I ever get cancer, I am not doing any of that stuff.
Yeah.
And it's not a, I don't feel like it's a fear of death. I feel like that kind of treatment doesn't align for me. I'm not saying I wouldn't do anything, but I definitely would not do the regular chemo radiation kind of stuff. I don't think. I mean, I'm not there. I can't really say for certain, but that's just my opinion. So what I'm saying is, it's interesting that that's there, because I feel like on some level I have kind of come to peace with that after the death of my husband, through the grieving, come to peace with understanding what it is to die. And I don't feel like I actually have that fear.
So
maybe
is really
it's not
interesting.
Maybe it's more like,
it's a deep-rooted subconscious belief that when you are trapped, you will die. Do you see the difference now? So this is the thing that's so curious. And this is probably from past lives.
Oh, I'm sure it is. I had one where I was stabbed in the throat, but I still lived.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what I invite you to do is just release any judgment to the belief, but it is there, but it's so the belief is, if I am trapped, I will die.
Okay.
Period. So what we do is, do you want to change that?
Yes.
Let's just change it. Creator of all that is, it is commanded, simply asked and requested the belief of, if I am trapped, I will die, be released on all levels, including the history level, and replaced with, if I am trapped, I will thrive. I know how to, when to, it is possible to thrive, and I do. Say yes to receive.
Yes.
Create that now. So what I'm doing is I'm witnessing the belief leaving your body and the new programming coming in that you will thrive. You know how to, when to, it is possible to, and you do thrive. It is done. It is done. It is done. Thank you. Okay. That is Theta.
Okay. So I want to share with the listeners, though, my experience of that. As soon as you said that, so of course I have that intention, right? Like, we're there, I'm having this conversation, even if it's broadcasted, I'm ready to do this. As soon as we started talking about actually doing the work, I am sensitive enough to sense energy, and I have grown enough in this to recognize what it feels like in the physical body, and I can totally feel it. Like, totally. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And it was a shift, crazy? Even as you went through that process. Yeah, no, I could feel it in my chest and shoulders, and I think it was like also a little bit in my head, but no, I could totally feel that. And I didn't do anything except focus on what you were saying.
That's exactly right. And for me, when I'm doing the work and I am doing the witnessing, I actually can feel it as
Yeah.
well. And when it hit bottom on you, I get the jolt in my solar plexus every single
Uh-huh.
time it's been complete.
What do you
And
mean when you hit the bottom? What does that mean?
so when you witness the new program coming into your energy field, I have to witness it coming in from your head down through your neck, down, basically all through the chakras, all the way to your feet, to know that it is solid, like it's installed. So if you, as a practitioner, don't witness it, actually, sometimes the programming switch doesn't happen. So I'm very
Yeah.
cognizant of that. I want to
Yeah.
witness all of that. So even though consciously, someone might not have that fear, they're like, oh, I've really worked through this.
Mhm.
Of course, you've worked through that particular thing. It doesn't mean there's other types of fear of dying. And I can't even tell you how many different beliefs I've pulled, because you can dig on yourself. What's the worst thing
Yeah.
about that? How does it make you feel? And then what happens? And you just burrow down to the root cause. And 9 times out of 10, it's never about being trapped, right? And you just want to flee. It's never, ever. That's the top belief. What the real root of the problem is, where does this stem from? And we could dig even deeper to find out. But is that really necessary? Because truly, if we just yank the belief and reprogram it, it's done. I want you to close your eyes, and I want you to go back to your sister and her trying to get you to do something, and you feel trapped, and you just want to leave. How is that memory now?
It's a lot better. I
Yeah,
almost feel like it's not the right word, but I almost feel smarter.
no, right. And it's
Meaning,
like it,
yeah,
it
I felt
changes. Yeah,
like she had disarmed me in a way, and almost like I was paralyzed. I couldn't respond to her because I couldn't respond to her in a way that made her understand that I was serious. I didn't want to do XYZ. She didn't care.
right,
Yeah.
right. And then so that's how the belief is cleared. We didn't even muscle test it or anything, but I could sense it's there. But that's how the belief is cleared. You take, the person back to that memory of what you just shared, and you said it's different, it's changed. The memory will either be blurry, or it will be non-existent, or it will be lighter, or
Yeah.
um laughable, however you want to look at it. So that's one of the reasons I love this belief system work, because it's really true. Our brain is just a computer.
Mm-hmm.
It's programmed. We just have to deprogram it, right? And we have to
Yeah.
put in programs that are of light, of beauty, of love, of joy, and you know how to thrive. But subconsciously, that program from when you were a little girl, maybe not.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. I'm going to share with you. I had a situation. My poor husband. I think I've told you he is my biggest trigger, my biggest teacher, and that's
Yeah.
how I look at him. And we were sitting in the hot tub talking last night, and he he says, "So how did you think pickleball went? How do you think you played pickleball today?" We played pickleball, and he's been playing a lot longer than I have, and I'm trying to catch up because I don't have as much time to put in as he does, and all this stuff. So I said, I played better. I played worse. It wasn't my worst day, but it wasn't my best. And he goes, "Yeah, about that. So do you know?" And then he went on to tell me all of the things I was doing wrong, right? And I'm observing myself in the moment going, how does this make me feel? I stepped out of my bubble and I went, oh, this is so fascinating. And I went to, what makes him think it's okay for him to give me constructive criticism? Now, we call that unsolicited. Okay.
Yeah.
I never said, well, what did I do wrong? What could I do better? I didn't say any of that. But what he thought was just completely fine was for him to share unsolicited all of the things that I did wrong, that I could do better, that I need to work on, that. And I'm like, okay, Anneliese, am I triggered right now? Honestly, Blair, I think the fact that I was able to step out of that moment briefly and go, what is going on? I was able to see the patriarchal wound in
Oh,
a completely different light because women don't typically go, honey, how did you think you played pickleball? And you're asking your husband this, right? And they're like, well, I mean, nine times out of 10, a woman would never, ever ask that question and then proceed to tell them how they could improve their game, what they did wrong. And I was just in awe because really and truly, the patriarchal wound is the men are up here, the women are down here,
yeah,
and they need help. Women need help. They just, they are inferior, quite honestly. I love
yeah,
my husband. Oh my God, he had no
yeah,
idea I'm thinking any of this. And if
yeah.
he was here right now, he'd be going, oh, God, you. He'd be horrified. But it was so fun, and I will use the word fun, for me to not be going, oh my God, he thinks he's so much better than I am, because I worked on that wound. Okay, this
Yeah.
competitive thing I have. So I was able to observe his wounding, just patriarchal across the board wounding,
Yeah.
and the feminine wound at play here, whereas women are basically inferior and men are superior. And it's okay for them to give unsolicited advice. But for a woman to do the same thing to a man, that would just never happen because of our wounding. I would just never be called to say, well, honey, how do you think you played pickleball? Right? I would never even think to do that because I could say, well, you know what? You poached my ball. You rushed the net. You were in the kitchen. I could have gone on
Yeah.
and on because honestly, all of those things he did. And I'm like, but what's the need? What's the use?
Yeah.
What's the benefit? Right?
Yeah. And it's interesting you say that because as you were telling me, which is correct, I know it's correct to say, well, it's not really about him. Of course, none of this is about the other person, right? Okay.
Ever,
But
ever.
it was interesting because one of the first things I usually wind up doing, and this is definitely a learned trait. It's something I've recognized because I've had to, whatever wounding I've had to come out of that and recognize, oh, this person's issues are not my issues, which is actually not
Yeah.
correct because this person's issues are there for us to recognize what's going on within us. But
Oh, 100%.
I did that
Yes.
as a protection too, because especially as an empath, you have people come into your space and you, whether it's verbal or nonverbal, like I actually think my husband and his daughter are actually quite attuned to the nonverbal kind of the energies. I
Sure.
think they're actually attuned to that. They don't know that they are, but
Oh,
they're
100%.
quite attuned. And but anyways, as being somebody who's receptive to that and has it for whatever reason, it affects me. And one of the easiest way an empath can recognize that is somebody comes into the room that doesn't vibe with you, and then you don't feel good, or when you leave there, you're exhausted. We've all had friends who exhaust us, right? But that's because we're allowing that to happen from our energy. So what I'm saying is, when the first complaints and the first sigh about the dishes or because this is not the
Yeah.
first time we've had this conversation. It's like, no, the first thing I realized, okay, it's not. Nobody was upset about the dishes until you walked in the room. Like it just wasn't even in the air. There were dishes there, but it wasn't like an issue. So I recognize, okay, that's not mine. I don't have to have that. So that does help me and to recognize that it's not mine. But then as it continues, because it does help me recognize, okay, this is meant for me to deal with something here. It's for me, it's not necessarily about how I feel about the dishes, right? It's
Never is.
something else. So the
Yeah.
same thing could be said about him who's irritated about the dishes. It's not really about, are the dishes done? And is this a matter of respect? This is more like there's something deeper there.
Yeah. Always.
Yeah.
Always, always. And I just want to piggyback on to you talking about, protecting your energy and feeling the energy of the room. I really came across something I thought was quite interesting. And you know how we're always told, oh, protect your energy, zip up your, chakra
Mm-hmm.
system, bubble up and do all
Mm-hmm.
that. And this particular healer I was listening to, she was saying, don't protect your energy, project it.
Yes, that we were just having that conversation.
That
Yes.
energy, instead of feeling you have to play small, dumb down, and protect it.
Yep.
And I really sat with that. And I thought, that is exactly spot on.
Yeah.
Because we walk around, that's a victim mindset,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Where we have to really, oh, it's a dangerous world out there. We got to protect ourselves. But quite honestly, projecting that bright white light energy is way more powerful than any protectant covering or bubble you could ever put around yourself. So I thought that was quite interesting. I like to share that with the listeners just because it really makes you stand in your power. When
Absolutely.
you just shift your mindset just a little bit as to, wow, that is so true.
Yep. I have a healer who, she has this, it's several healings, but one of them that really hit home with me was that. And the topic of it was energy vampires, which is the same topic we're talking about.
100%.
Right?
Yeah.
And you can find that all over the internet. What do you need to do? They use the word protection, all that. She presented it in a different way, which is similar to what, just going to affirm that. She says, they're not energy vampires. You're allowing them to suck that
100%.
energy from you.
It's the truth.
Right?
It's the truth.
But we were actually having that conversation in the last Reiki class about and there's a lot of concern about that because it's like, well, why do I need to protect myself? And actually there is a whole podcast with Kathy sort of about this, and she doesn't really take the same approach. So that's really interesting, but it really is not on all levels, and all the conversations I've had, it really is less about the quote protection. You get protection from emanating your own pure energy because people just aren't drawn to that.
Yes. Yeah. All that negativity will fall away because the light is just too bright.
Right.
But also light attracts butterflies, and it also attracts mosquitoes and moths and all that other stuff you don't want. So you just have to project it loud and proud and just say, you know what, this is what it is. Like it, leave it. And what's really interesting too, Blair, is coming from a trauma response, the whole fight, flee, fawn, freeze thing. Mm-hmm. I have been noticing, especially with what's going on in the world right now, depending on what default you go to. Oh, are you the type that's just going to freeze when you sense danger? Or are you the type that's going to flee? It really comes down to the type of person. You can almost see this astrologically in someone's chart.
I bet you could.
Like,
well, you see the anger all in mine. People say that all the time.
100%. Where's your Mars? I'd love to know.
Oh, Lordy. Depends on what calculation. But
so for me, I'm Libra moon. I'll use me as an example. And Libra moon, one of the biggest shadow traits they're trying to let go of is people pleasing. Yeah. So a people pleaser, typically their default trauma response is freezing or fawning, because they don't want to upset the apple cart. They don't want to they want to make sure everything's okay. That's totally me. Those are my two defaults. I'll do either freeze or fawn. Now, someone like you, anger is a typical, put your dukes up, let's fight, or you'll flee. Yeah. You'll flee the situation. You're like, I'm in danger. I must leave now. Or if you're in the angered state, you will put the dukes up and let's fight. Yeah. So I do think it's interesting to help a person work through their trauma just by understanding, what is your default? When you sense danger, what is the first thing that you do? And my daughter she senses danger, she gets out, she flees. She knows immediately it's unsafe, she will leave.
So how do you know that in her chart?
Yeah.
So my sun is my moon is in Aries. Okay.
Oh yeah.
If it's astrological, which I find really funny because mine is in Ashwini. So that's the nakshatra, which is behind, right? Yeah. And the whatever you call it, the icon or I forgot what you call it. Basically, there's something that represents this nakshatra, right? It's twin horses. Okay.
Oh,
But just the fact that it's a horse I find
so much
it
sense.
incredibly ironic because it's
No, I love talking astrology because you can learn so much about a person there. Aries moon is all about rage. And one of the things, the shadow traits that an Aries moon wants to let go of is rage and integrate peace.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Libra moon, let go of people pleasing and integrate boundaries. Because one of the biggest things that we do as a Libra moon, for instance, is break our own boundaries. So it teaches other people to break them as well. Just like rage and Aries moon, so interesting because I know a lot of Aries moons and very similar, very fiery energy, but it's very attractive too. It's very loving and fun. There's the shadow side and the light side, and that's what makes a person so wonderful and vibrant. But integrating peace and calm is one of the things that you're probably always striving for, right?
And it's
striving for boundaries.
Incredibly ironic. Me pulling all of the just my experience, right? So I got part of a handprint analysis, and apparently there's different schools. I don't know if you're familiar with any of this, but basically there's different schools, which is essentially what is your real purpose, kind of in this life, right?
Yeah.
So apparently to have what I have, you can have like 1 or 2 fingers, but I've got like 6 fingers on this, like 6 of them. Okay. And it's school of peace. And essentially it's all about being able to be calm through everything. Like to be connected with myself, which is just like coming at me from it's in astrology, it's in handprint analysis. It's, it's like everywhere.
I've had my hands done too. And it is fun. It's so interesting how astrology and your hand, they are hand in hand, literally, they are skipping down that yellow brick road and they are spot on. Like my purpose is service to humanity. Okay. What's your soul purpose?
I don't remember what
I bet it's peace. I bet I just have
it's school of peace. I know I'm in school of peace.
Yeah.
I don't remember. I don't know.
Mine is service. I'm all about service. It's so interesting to look at it from both sides of the coin, right?
Yeah.
Astrology and then hand mapping. And I've had my hand done multiple times. And your handprint changes, your fingerprints and everything.
Yeah.
So you could see how you're evolving and how you're changing. Fascinating to me.
Yeah.
I love that stuff.
It does help to understand people better. That's why I love it so much, because you can, when you're studying yourself, you learn more about yourself. But then as you learn more about yourself and you learn, like we just talked about the moons, every planet has a positive and negative side, right?
Every single one.
So that means everybody's does, right?
Everybody's.
So there's more compassion developed and so forth, but yeah.
And we all have versions of it, right? I have some primal rage. I'm not going to lie. My Mars is in the 7th house. Come on, baby. One-on-one relationships. Let's go. I will fight to the end for you at my own expense.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. We laugh because it's just so real.
It is. Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that's a really good example of, so we say the trauma occurs, we recognize it, and then we say, how did that make me feel? And then remind me again what we do after that.
Well, once you get to what is it attached to, what belief? I mean, you never would have thought feeling trapped was a fear of death, because the next thing that happens is you die. Those are your words, not mine. You came up with that. So that tells me that's inside somewhere. It came up from somewhere. And so once you are aware of what it is, you just simply ask, Creator, yank that program, but always replace it, or something else will fill that void. Replace it with the positive, meaning instead of die, you will thrive. When you're trapped, you know how to thrive, girl. You're a survivor, and not just survive, thrive. So whatever you install in the place of the program you just plucked out. It's to the positive nth degree. And you can just do downloads too, which means you can just say, I know how to, when to, is possible to, stand in my power. And I do, with peace and ease, love and compassion. You can say however you want it to be, but then you have to witness each one of those things.
Okay, so you say it, and then you when you say you have to wait for it. Now, you described it really well earlier. I want to share this with other, whoever's listening. What does that really mean? So I'm going to translate and you correct me, but basically you say what you want to have happen. And then you kind of imagine that the energy of those words, as for me, I'm visual. So I can imagine like a ball of light or something, right? Yep. And just kind of imagine. And then also what I do is have it try to notice the changes as a ball of light goes through. Like physically, what do I notice the difference? And then you will just intuitively know when it's done.
Yeah.
So you're just spending a few moments doing this.
You're just spending a few moments. And what I would say to everyone listening is anyone and everyone can do this on themselves.
Yes.
Don't need a healer. It is helpful. Sometimes, I get stuck and I need to call my healer friend and say, hey, I need you to yank this program. I can't find it. But literally the program is a belief. Let's just make it simple. It's a belief. It was programmed in you, indoctrinated, whatever words you want to use, probably at your birth or in past lives that you brought into this life. So finding what that belief is and being able to pluck it out by witnessing those words, the energy. And what I do is this is my imagination. I imagine a fountain just coming up from the bottom of your feet, coming up, 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 up. And they're just words, coming out of your head into this huge fountain. Then the universe takes them. And then the new program coming down into your head like a rainfall. This is how I do it. And I watch every single thing go through the head, the chakras, the third eye, the solar plexus, everything all the way down to your feet. And I will get a confirmation in my solar
You get a
plexus.
physical, like an energy shift.
I get a physical, I mean, if you want to be that, it will literally hit me when it's hit the bottom. And I know it is complete. And the witnessing for yourself, if you're doing belief work on yourself, is super important, just as much as it is when you're doing it with other people.
Yeah, one of those keys I've learned, the real keys to healing is, and I've had people tell me this in a way that I didn't know I was already doing it, but I have learned that is one of the absolute key things is you have to kind of know already. You have to believe, you have to feel, whatever you want to, however you describe that, but it has to be fully in your body and in your aura that the healing is already done. So as a healer, that's what we do is we come to people and we know that they're healed. We know that they're good. Right. Now then we get to talk to them and we see, oh, okay, I kind of see what's going on. But you still have to hold that for them.
Yes.
And so you're saying we hold that for ourselves, which our higher self, I think, does a wonderful job at that.
Right. It's super important to do for yourself just as much as you do for another. And I will say, with my clients that I work with on belief work, it's really important to understand you can reinstall that program that you just released by ruminating on it and going over it and over it. You can reinstall that. And so and it's all choice. We all have free will. If you choose to believe that it's gone, it's gone. If you choose to believe it's still there, it's there.
That's why you have to be there wholeheartedly. Right?
Thought. Yes. Yeah. So when people say, well, will it come back? If you want it to, it's up to you. I don't want that crap coming back. When I get rid of it, I want it gone. So I don't even give it a second thought. Now there can be remnants and shoot-offs of that belief attached to something else that may feel similar. You just have to continually work on dissolving all those negative beliefs that keep you trapped, right? You trapped and you not free.
Send inquiries, suggestions for new discussion topics, and comments to podcast@happylioncenter.com. That's podcast@happylioncenter.com. If you found this content enjoyable or helpful, please comment, like, share, and download. Donations are appreciated and help us to produce more of similar content. Consider making a contribution at the links in the description box. Your support is greatly appreciated. The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of the Happy Lion Center and are not intended to malign any religion, ethnic group, club, organization, company, individual, or anyone or anything. None of the content provided should be considered a substitute for legal, financial, medical, psychiatric advice or as care from a certified professional.